So our next step in studying perfect tenses is going to be the past perfect tense and the past perfect continuous tenses. So let's examine how to form these structures by looking at Table 4. To form the past perfect tense in an affirmative sentence, it's even easier than forming it in the present tense. Because no matter if you're using I, you, we, they, he, she, or it, you will always say had. For example, I had already come home, or she had already come home. Here it's all the same. Likewise, in a negative sentence, it works the same way using had not. And just like in present perfect, in the interrogative sentence, we move had to the front of the sentence. Had I come home? Had she come home? Had they come home? And finally, to answer questions asked to you in the past perfect tense, it's even easier. For a positive answer, you can always say, yes, I had, or yes, she had, yes, they had. It doesn't change. Likewise, for a negative answer, no, I had not, or I hadn't. No, she had not, or she hadn't. And no, they had not, or they hadn't. Now, let's look at some cases of usage of the past perfect tense. In the first example, when he returned home, his family had already eaten supper. Or, in the second example, Anne began studying English, which she had wanted to do for years. And finally, his uncle mentioned that he had not played billiards before. Here, past perfect continuous, or past perfect, tells us that the action happened before the given moment in the past, or was completed before this given moment in the past. So, basically, it's just like present perfect, but in the past. The past perfect continuous tense, formed by using had be and the present participle, remember the ing form, is used a little bit differently, but is very similar to the present perfect continuous tense. So let's examine some ways of forming it in Table 5. To form the past perfect continuous tense in affirmative sentences, it's much the same as in the past perfect. You can always say I, you, we, they, he, she, or it had, but just like in present perfect continuous, you need to add been. I had been coming home. They had been coming home. We had been coming home. In a negative sentence, had will change to had not. For example, I had not been coming home. They had not been coming home. We had not been coming home. In interrogative sentences, had again moves to the front, but the rest stays put. For example, had I been coming home? Or had we been coming home? Or even, had it been coming home? And finally, to answer these questions in positive and negative forms, you will answer them the same way as in past perfect. Yes, I had. Yes, we had for a positive answer. Or no, they had not, or they hadn't. And no, he had not, or he hadn't for a negative answer. So now let's look at some cases of usage of the past perfect continuous tense. For example, Jane had been preparing for the exam for 3 months before she passed it. Here, the sentence is telling me about what she had been doing up until this point, until the point where she passed the exam. Or another example, the tourists had been traveling for 3 hours when the bus broke down. And finally, one last example, we had been talking for over an hour when he called us. Here, the past perfect continuous, much like the present perfect continuous, tells me about what had been happening up until this point. The only difference is when. So let's recap the material that we've learned today. We've discussed perfect tenses in the present and the past, specifically the present perfect continuous, past perfect, and past perfect continuous tenses. And I highly suggest that you review this lesson once and maybe even twice or thrice more, because this material is very, very important. So, that being said, I'll see you all in the next lesson.